lovethinerd.com/community and head on over to our Discord. We do also have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Tickety Talk, all those things. But I think that the true community happens in Discord. That's what I think. And also in person, in real life stuff. But we don't have that on the internet. So you
don't have real life stuff on the internet?
It's different. It really is. It just hits different, as the kids say.
Okay.
And so, anyway, speaking of kids, we're going to talk a little bit about cancel culture. And that was not that's
not
the only
a good segue. Good try.
Segue I had.
That's a good try.
It was a great try.
Yeah.
That's my favorite segue.
Well, I thought we could talk a little bit about some other cancellations.
Okay.
Some TV shows that have been canceled.
Ooh.
Because before cancel culture, there was canceled TV shows.
Yeah, I think that when we were actually starting to talk about this and build this episode, I had mentioned not just TV shows, but also movies and stuff like that. And so we're going to kind of get into this just in a little bit. We don't have a whole lot of time. We actually did several episodes last night that we didn't record because we were just getting our words out about these things.
It's true. We cut a bunch of stuff because we were like, we're never going to be able to say all of those things. Okay. Here are some TV shows. I think these are only TV shows that we have here.
Right here. Yes.
That were canceled. That we feel like that was a bad call.
Terrible.
Those things should not have been canceled.
Bad idea.
Or maybe if we don't think it seems like the internet largely agrees.
Yeah.
Because there is one that we haven't watched, but every single list that I pulled up mentioned this particular show. And I was like, I guess I need to watch that show.
I don't think I'll be watching it, but you are welcome to.
Why? You must know more about it than I do.
I just don't want to. There's nothing about it that makes me want to watch it.
All right. Well, okay. First on our list.
This is very personal.
Yeah, because I feel like I never hear people talking about this show, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
It was on for one season.
And it has people that you've seen in other things in it.
Yeah, I don't know that guy's name. I should look it up.
Mr. What's-His-Face.
Awake.
Hmm?
It was so good. And it was about this guy who experiences a terrible car crash.
Yep.
This is not really a spoiler because this is in the very first episode. Suddenly, he's in this, his son has died. It was him and his wife and his son in a car crash. And his son died and didn't make it.
Yeah.
And he's grieving with his wife, and then he falls asleep and is instantly into another reality where his wife died.
Yeah.
And his son made it.
Flip-flop.
And he can never have them both together. He just goes from one reality to the other.
So he's always awake.
He's always awake.
He never gets to sleep.
Tries to keep little rubber bands on his arms to figure out where he is. And then can he get them back together?
It's a fantastic show that had no resolution.
And it has, I don't know what this guy's name is. The thing that I know him from is in The Patriot. He was that horrible bad guy who burned the church with all the people in it.
He looks like a James Bond villain.
He plays an amazing bad guy. I think he was Captain Hook in something as well. One of the weird Peter Pan, was he?
Pan? Was he in Pan?
I can't remember. Anyway.
It's not important. You guys can IMDb it later.
I thought I would never be able to like him because he was such a bad guy. I felt that way about Benedict Cumberbatch also. Because I saw him as Khan first.
You know how acting works though, right?
But sometimes they're so good that I'm like, there's no way that you could be that terrible and gross unless you are actually they typecast you. They had to typecast you.
No,
that guy from Prison Break who is disgusting.
Oh yeah.
Don't do it. Don't.
I did it anyway. Teabag, yeah.
Ooh, I hate him. Okay.
He even had a redemptive arc. It doesn't matter.
No.
But like, here's the thing. That's how that legitimately is acting. That's how it works.
I know. Okay. So anyway, that guy is the main actor in this. And he was so
good.
Was so good.
It was a good show.
And then
I kind of want to go back and watch it again.
And it got canceled, and like they knew it was going to be canceled before the season was like done being filmed, I guess.
Yeah.
And so they did this really hasty tie up in the end, and we were like, flip the table. Like, are you kidding me? We were like, I know they're not going to do this because it's like the most obvious thing that you could possibly do. And they did it. And we were like, it's because they were wronged and they didn't renew the season. And it was frustrating.
And then you look at all the shows that are still on. Yeah.
Yes. Why did Gilmore Girls get so many seasons?
Hey, watch your mouth.
Okay.
Over there.
Okay. Sorry, right. Gilmore Girls fans. Okay. Freaks and Geeks.
That's the one that I'm just not.
We haven't seen it, but
I'm sure you're yelling at us right now. And
maybe
stop yelling at me.
James
please.
Franco is in it. Another person who I'm like,
don't care. I mean,
who seems so creepy to me.
I enjoyed the Spider-Man movies, but like,
yeah. Anyway, that was on a lot of lists. So apparently people felt like Freaks and Geeks was done dirty and that they should have had more seasons.
That's really all we have to say about that. So if you liked it, hey, awesome. If not, cool.
I'll binge one season with you. That's apparently, is there only one? Maybe two.
Too soon, Anna. Too soon.
This one's yours.
Yeah.
You do this next one because I don't know anything about this one.
I put on here Nick Arcade.
Nick Arcade.
So Nickelodeon used to be amazing. Absolutely
I just know
amazing.
there was lots of green slime on it.
So much green slime. Now, don't get me wrong. Nickelodeon's pretty dope these days as well. Every now and again, I'll hop on and I'll watch like an NFL game on Nickelodeon. Remember I showed you one of those last season? I was like, look what they do. This is really cool.
Oh, yeah. With the kids being the commentators and stuff.
And they got the
that was cool.
touchdown slime cam and all sorts of
stuff. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But what they used to do back in the day, and this is like at the same basic time frame as like Legends of the Hidden Temple and stuff like that.
You should watch that Nickelodeon football on Sundays with the kids.
It's only one game.
Rats.
It's only one game.
You could probably be like, football's cool, and get them to watch it with you if it were like that.
Football is cool, and at the time of this recording, I am number 2 in my fantasy league. I'm crushing it with my players that are doing all the work.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I hope he's listening. I'm beating Lane. And Jordan. And basically
Jordan
all of my
doesn't listen to this podcast.
Basically all of my other friends that I'm playing with, except for one.
Oh.
So
no, except for one who's beating you.
I'm beating Dory. I'm all over it. Anyway,
okay.
Dory, for listening, I need you to make some changes on your roster so that you win this week, because I need you to win. Because he's playing the guy that's beating me, and I need him to. Anyway, it's not
Nick
important.
Arcade, though.
Like I was saying about Nick Arcade. Okay, so it's going on at the same time as Legends of the Hidden Temple, which is probably the more widely known of this kind of show. Olmec, you've got the. What was it, like the blue iguanas, the silver monkeys, or silver snakes, and green monkeys and stuff like this. Anyway, all these teams, and they would have to answer questions, and then they would go do stuff, and they would run through and solve puzzles. With Nick Arcade, it was virtually the same concept. Broad brush,
actual virtual reality.
We're all going, waka waka.
I see what you did there.
And what they would do is they would answer video game trivia, and then they would go and then they would play actual arcade games, and then whoever had the highest score, would win, and then they would move on and all sorts of stuff. It was like really cool. It was this trivia and actual video game playing time, and then whoever was the team that was winning at the very end, they would get to go in front of like this green screen, and the technology was bonkers. I watched a documentary on it probably about a year ago, and it was like weatherman technology. And so you would actually
like meteorologists.
Yes, you would climb up different stuff and all sorts of things, and you were just climbing on green boxes
Right.
and up ladders and stuff.
But it looked like
But it looked like you're playing Donkey Kong.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. It was absolutely wonderful. They built technology for that. So anyway, Nick Arcade could have gone on for 1,000 seasons and it still wouldn't have been enough.
Okay.
I feel like I got canceled too early.
The next one, the OA.
Oh, man. Do you remember what OA stands for?
Original Angel.
Oh, okay. Is that for real or are you making that up?
Yeah, that's for real.
I'm not making. Hey, listen, lady. I'm trying to understand because I didn't remember what it was.
Yeah,
and
I'm
you
pretty
had
sure
that
it's
so
the
quick.
Original Angel.
You said it so quick that I thought you were making it up.
No.
Okay, I
I'm
believe you.
not.
I believe you.
So
I'm gonna Google it or believe
this
you now.
one was weird.
I loved it.
You loved it. I was weirded
loved
out
it.
the whole time.
You know what I want to do?
I mean, this has that guy in it too.
Get out. Is he in there?
Isn't he the bad guy who locks her in the basement or whatever?
Redacted.
The weird basement.
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure he's the weird guy.
I'll go back and watch it.
And he's bad again. He's a bad guy.
My superpower is I watch television shows.
Yeah. It is
I want to.
2 seasons.
Will you learn the hand motions with me? All
No.
the poses.
I'm pretty sure they're not.
They're fine.
Mm-mm.
We can
Not-
time travel.
Nope.
It's kind of time travel-y. We could
Nope, not
slip
doing
into other dimensions.
Phyllis is in it from The Office.
Phyllis is in it.
You want to hear something weird?
That's the whole reason I came here.
The Office was the first thing that really Phyllis, like TV show that Phyllis was in.
Yeah, she was a writer.
She was a writer. And then she was in The Office.
Yeah. I've also
I think she was a burlesque dancer.
I've also listened
before
to the
she
Office
was
Ladies
a writer.
podcast. Yeah.
Yeah. And but then she ended up being on the OA.
She's in a
'Cause I
couple other
guess-
things now.
And she's sadness. And she's sadness and
She's in
Inside Out.
Out.
Yeah, her voice, like there's just something about her, like she's a very specific character.
It was a smart move for her to move into that.
Yeah.
But with the OA, what a weird movie. I'm sorry, weird TV show. I don't even know where to start with it. How would you pitch that?
I
Like,
don't even know.
like you're in a board meeting and you're like, "Hey, Ted, I got this idea. You got to hear this idea for the show that I got."
Yeah, I mean,
It's gonna blow your mind.
there's a girl who's blind, and
She's like an angel, kinda.
or the original.
Yeah.
The original.
Maybe she is, but like, wait till you figure out how they get.
It's just I don't even.
What's the weirdest thing you've ever seen somebody do in public? What are the 12 weirdest things you've ever seen somebody do in public? Those are the moves they make.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, we could not talk about TV shows that got canceled that never should have been canceled. You've been screaming
No.
at whatever you're listening to this
Mhm.
on the entire time.
Look, we get it. Ren and Stimpy.
Firefly.
Oh, Firefly.
Firefly.
Okay, yeah.
Ren and Stimpy. Now, Firefly. Oh man.
Firefly was a show ahead of its time.
Ah.
The world was not ready. Now you could make the argument, right, that like shows like Star Trek and Star Trek rather. I'm sorry, not Star Trek. Star Trek. I'm not an idiot. I just talk weird sometimes.
But it has Nathan Fillion in it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But back then, who was Nathan Fillion?
Captain Hammer.
He was no, I don't even think he was Captain
No,
Hammer yet.
I know. Because, okay, so did Firefly come out before Castle?
Yes, I want to say absolutely it did.
I mean, he had to be in something.
Well, here's the
Anyway,
thing,
he was so good.
though. So for the 2.5 of you out there that don't know what Firefly is, Firefly was a space western.
Yes.
That's the loosest way to pitch Firefly. Okay,
Yeah.
the space
With a
western.
little bit of Asian culture thrown in.
Yeah, and it is so good. It's fantastic. It's witty. It's funny.
Oh, yeah.
It makes you think.
Touching.
Yeah.
Like heart. There's some kind of cool, like, spiritual elements to it.
Yep.
There's a lot
yeah,
going
it was
on.
really, really great. Like,
And when we're really weird episode.
oh yeah,
don't
Your
recommend.
dad made me skip that. I need to go back. I feel like I'm an adult now. I should probably go back and watch that episode. Jeez.
Oh, you
Anyway,
don't want to.
But it's one of those shows that like it was so popular, it had such a cult following, still has that cult following.
Yes.
That it got a sequel in the movie in Serenity. And so Serenity was the first thing that I ever saw from Firefly.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's true.
And I know that it's true. That's the first thing I ever saw.
For the both of us.
For you as well?
Yeah.
And so, because we didn't watch it when it aired on Fox.
We didn't have streaming stuff back then, and we were broke, and we didn't have
cable either.
Yeah,
and so it was one of those deals where, like, even when Fox had it and they were running it in real time, they ran some of the episodes out of order and all sorts of, like, Fox just borked it.
Really, yeah, they botched it.
And so
for sure,
they didn't do it justice. I think it aired at a weird time and like all sorts of stuff. And so they didn't know what they had.
And then they canceled it, and people were mad.
Yeah, uprising, right? And then Serenity comes out, and they're like, maybe they're going to revive it. And then they just didn't.
Yeah.
But I thought Serenity was fantastic.
Yeah. Well,
and so
I need to watch both of those things again.
It made me want to go back and watch Firefly, which I had never seen before, right? Like we just mentioned. And so I think but anybody who's seen Firefly would, I don't want to say anybody, most people that have seen it, a vast majority of people who have seen it would agree one season, not even close to enough.
No.
But the problem was that after Serenity came out, then the question becomes, do you go back and do pre-Serenity or do you pick up after Serenity? And by that time, a lot of the actors and all that stuff that they had already moved on to other endeavors and further in their career. Some of them were on other television shows like Castle and stuff like that you were talking about. And so to get them to come back and do Firefly, I think they would have. But
yeah. Oh, man.
I don't know.
Rest in peace.
But too soon. Are you talking about the show?
Yeah.
Okay, not the...
No.
Okay.
If you've seen Firefly, you know what that moment was about. So if you were confused, just go watch it. Just go watch it.
Always too soon.
Okay.
But anyway, those are just some of the shows that we thought ended way too soon. But real quick here, I'm going to run through some things that...
Oh, you're going to do this?
Yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to run through
them. Man.
Here are some of the things that we think, because I just want people to yell at the commercial break. Here are some TV shows and movies that we think could have ended sooner.
Yeah.
Maybe should have ended sooner.
Maybe went on a little too long.
Maybe
never should have been a TV show in the first place.
Maybe. I'm just going to read these off, not even going to commentate on them. And, and I'm going to be real with you. We built this list. Yikes. Okay, here we go. Ready?
We don't agree about everything.
Again, TV shows and or movies that maybe should have been canceled earlier or altogether. Supernatural.
Do you want you read one and then I read one and then you read one and I read one and they just wonder whose idea it was?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Heroes.
The Matrix.
The Office.
The Hobbit.
Obi-Wan.
New Girl.
Anne with an E.
Now that you are all sufficiently tilted, we're going to take a short break, but don't go anywhere because when we come back, we are talking about the serious side of cancel culture, how it relates to the church, and maybe a little bit of where Ann and I don't necessarily agree on it right here on the Church Nerds Podcast. Hey there, and welcome back to the Church Nerds Podcast. Once again, my name is Bubba.
My name's Anna.
And today we're talking all about cancel culture.
Woohoo! Everybody's favorite thing.
I can't wait to read people's emails and have very fun conversations about the list that we left the last segment with.
Canceled church nerds.
But what I also, but what I also want is I want to hear, what do you think got canceled too early and what do you maybe think should have been canceled a little bit sooner?
What did
just
we miss?
shows, just like shows and movies. That's what we're talking about, okay? In this segment, what we're actually talking about is the deeper and maybe darker side of cancel culture, the more real, the more nitty-gritty stuff. And so it might get a little heavy. Probably will get a little heavy.
There's a lot of emotions and angriness involved in cancel culture.
Yeah.
On both sides of it.
On both sides. Now, Anna and I yesterday, we had a little mock trial where we got a lot of our words out for each other of what we may or may not say here on this podcast. And I will say this, that a lot of these conversations are not for this format. They're just not.
True.
A lot of them are to be discussed in situation. They're to be discussed in context. They're to be discussed, period. Full stop. It's not just to be spoken.
What was that? Lane said something about like tables are for talking or something like that.
Tables are for flipping. Yeah.
No, but basically a lot of these conversations where you do end up in a deadlock on the internet, and it's just a mess.
Yeah.
He's like, it's just not the right place.
Yeah,
go have this conversation at a table with someone.
We know this to be true, that it's infinitely more difficult to have these conversations face to face with people you love and to be so vehemently against them.
It's not a comfortable conversation.
No.
But probably a better outcome of it.
Here's to hoping. Yeah, we'll see. But anyway, we're talking, like I said, about cancel culture. So we thought that the easiest way to start off would just be to give a definition of the word cancel.
Why not? From ye old Webster, Merriam-Webster.
Mm-hmm. This is in King James, right?
It defines cancel culture thusly.
Mm-hmm. It was the forging of two hot metals.
The practice or tendency of engaging in mass canceling as a way of expressing disapproval and exerting social pressure.
So that is the definition for cancel culture.
Cancel culture.
Culture, not canceling in general.
Canceling would be like, nobody watch this person's movies.
Yeah.
Nobody hire this person. Nobody shop at this store. Nobody eat this chicken sandwich. I just said the chicken sandwich.
Those are all things. Those are all real things.
Things that happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't, it could be insurance companies. It could be there are so many
There's
things.
Literally no limit to it.
Currently, we're seeing a lot of cancel this celebrity.
Yeah.
This kind of stuff. So big hot button issue.
Yep.
It's everywhere. People are doing it. And then there's a bunch of other people who are like, we live in such a cancel culture. And they get really mad about it because American culture and the American population is really divided about whether this is a positive thing or whether this is a negative thing. Some people think this is good because this is providing accountability that has been needed for a very long time.
It's a social service of sorts.
Right. And with the internet and this ability for us to all communicate and for things to go viral and for us to all band together really quickly about stuff, then we're able to, act on things very quickly in ways that we haven't been able to do it before. And that's a good thing because sometimes there are situations where, because stuff hasn't traveled, information hasn't traveled, there were situations that were allowed to fester for a really, really long time that maybe should have come to light. Maybe people should have been canceled that weren't for a very long time, and it just allowed things to get worse and worse and worse and worse.
I think of defund the police as one of those more recent ones where I don't know that necessarily, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but like this is just my thought and my understanding, is I don't know that necessarily what was being said was just absolutely 100% get rid of the police, right? I think some people meant that,
I think some people meant it.
but
Yeah.
I think other people were like, this just needs to be brought to the attention, and if the pain point is funding, then maybe we'll push there a little bit. And so I think that that's where like both sides have something to be said. It's like, hey, if we would have understood a little bit earlier what we were doing, and the misbehavings of these rotten police officers in XYZ cases, not across the board, but like if we were to be dealing with this earlier, we wouldn't have the cancel culture right now for defund the police. But that action needing to happen, heavy air quotes, right? Maybe it did, maybe it didn't, but needing to happen so that it gets the attention of the police and the authorities that we're not going to put up with it anymore. Like I think that that's the kind of tension that we're talking about as far as cancel culture goes.
Like if we're really worried about being canceled, maybe we'll be a little bit more careful with
exactly
our words, with our actions, with our money, with our all of the things.
Which is interesting because most brands have a PR person, and PR stands for public relations, and that person or that body's job is to make sure that whatever the thing is that they're protecting looks good in the eyes of the public. And so it's an interesting juxtaposition. It's an interesting sometimes dichotomy that the two live in. But these are the things that we're framing everything here, right? I'm not saying defund the police, don't defund the police. That was just an example of kind of what the two sides looking from both angles might look like.
Right. Well, I mean, so there's accountability measures where canceling has maybe been needed or appropriate.
Sure.
Like we've got cases like Harvey Weinstein, we've got Matt Lauer, we've got Bill Cosby, even like renaming the Washington Redskins.
Yep.
Those are probably situations that really needed to be handled. Some of them had been needing to be handled for decades.
For a very long time.
And had gone, I don't want to say unnoticed because there were people who noticed it, but they didn't speak up, or it just didn't gain the traction, or whatever it was that, or, gosh, it's really heartbreaking to think of some of the situations and why they didn't come to light sooner. So there are some ways where it's like, sure, there's an amount of accountability, and that accountability is a good thing, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Then you have this other side that's like, it gets so extreme sometimes, it gets so mean sometimes, and then sometimes we're walking on eggshells, not saying things that really need to be said because we're afraid of the fallout, or afraid of like the lashback that is going to happen. And so then people start to look at it as censorship. And we've seen a lot of that with like, social media, and whether we can post, whether we can't post, and then going and finding other outlets where we can post. And then that gets really like crazy. And then you're like, okay, but then the accountability, like it's a good thing. People we're not good. This
is stuff that is not, it's not foreign to us. Like we're not necessarily speaking from hypothetical situations on some of these things, because inside of Love Thy Nerd, we've already dealt with some of these things on in varying degrees, right? And so this isn't a thing that just exists outside. Every person has been affected by cancel culture, probably in some way, shape, or form. If you were to think about the people that the situations that you've been in, everybody went through the civil uprising that was all of the election stuff, and
just
then
the like hot mess that 2020 was in general.
Absolutely. And the George Floyd, and like all of the things that went on with that, and we were in the the world was in this pressure box because of pandemic and isolation and all of these things that were happening
Fear.
in and around
Yeah.
all of that. And it just created this storm that all we had was the internet, right? All we had was activism. All we had was trying to do something to make a difference, right, wrong, or indifferent. Everybody was highly activated in those moments because couldn't go to work, we couldn't do anything, and it just created these perfect moments, this perfect storm of activism. And I will say that I think a lot of good actually came out of that. I do. I also think a lot of harm came out of that because we weren't properly managing our feelings. We weren't regulating our emotions very well in those moments. Not all of them specifically. Again, I'm painting with very broad brushes, but I think both good and bad things came out of that.
Well, sure. I mean, the mental health of the nation went
Plummeted,
down
right.
the toilet that year. And people are never at their best, like on the internet when they're unwell. So, yeah. Ugh.
Yeah.
Well,
So anyway, I mean, we also had some stuff on here about you were talking about censorship.
right. Well, just sometimes where it's like, does cancel culture go over the line sometimes where it's like, do we need to full on cancel some of these things in the same way that we canceled, Harvey Weinstein
Sure.
and all of them? Like J.K. Rowling, Disney. There's constantly people trying to cancel Disney, cancel Netflix, or just any political movement. Just name one, like throw a rock at a political movement and somebody wants to cancel something, like where it's like, do we need to cancel it? Or do we just need to admit that we disagree and then try to find some, I don't know.
See, that's one of the things.
Some amount of compromise.
It's one of the things that I've been saying for a while now. It's a drum that I've been beating, is that I really feel that we as a society have just completely lost the ability to disagree with one another. And
I mean, I think there's a lot of people that agree with you on that.
I mean, if you think something different, cancel.
Right.
And we cancel people silently all the time. Kick them off our Facebook. Unfollow people, do all sorts of stuff.
In a sense.
Drag them on TikTok.
Well, I mean, in a sense, like everybody does that even outside of social media. It's like, I have no respect for you, and so I'm not going to listen to you.
Yeah.
Like, canceled in our mind, in a sense. It's just that now it's like, we want to do it, and we want everybody to do it with us, and we want to make this big, like, stink about it. But that's what we're seeing a lot of.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's, I don't know, different.
So, I mean, that's just kind of the overarching, like, view of cancel culture. And Anna and I were like, man, how do we land? How do we bring hope? How do we do that stuff? And I was like, I don't think our job here on this podcast is to answer the questions. I don't think that that's it.
I was like, I have a new catchy slogan for church nerds, which is like the podcast that leaves you with more questions than you came in with.
You're welcome.
No answers, just questions all the time.
But one thing, this was actually the idea that kicked off this entire episode, was that, man, Christians are so dang good at cancel culture. Like,
I think the exact thing that you said to me was like, Christians basically like made cancel culture.
Yeah,
like we've been doing it since way before.
For lack of a better term, the people of God we were the pioneers of cancel culture.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting was that as we started to do a little bit more digging and research and thinking and talking about it, was like the question came up was, did God create cancel culture? Heavy question mark. Underline, awkward pause, ...
Am I even allowed to ask this
Are we allowed to ask
question?
that question?
Uh-huh.
And I think that the answer is, yeah, we're allowed to ask that question. Like this is how we go on a path of discovery, is by asking questions. Now, this isn't we're not hip because we're deconstructing our faith and doing all this stuff and whatever, like that. We're not doing that to be cool. It's like sometimes you get to these moments in our spiritual walk. And if you're not a Christian, please enjoy the peek behind the curtain. Anna and I are. We've been Christians for the better part of our life. Anna's been a Christian for far longer than I have because she's better than me or whatever. And you are better than me, so don't look at the camera like that because it's true.
That's one of those gym looks.
Yeah. But what we've come to understand is that when we come to these moments, if we just skirt them, then they never come to any resolution. And it's just this weird pit of doubt that can grow into anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so we like to kind of follow the rabbit down the hole. Sometimes it leads to good spots. Sometimes it leads to really awkward spots. But I think that's where we kind of landed on this as far as like a conceptual idea.
Well, so let me just explain why we even talked about that question. Was like, in a sense, God told his people, like, you're a strange people. There were rules about intermarriage. There was the death penalty and like moral absolutes out the wazoo, where it's like, this is right and this is wrong. And if like somebody does this wrong thing, it is not to be tolerated.
Yep.
Like, you're done.
At all.
You are done.
Yeah.
So then you have this whole group of people that's like, and we're done with you, and we're done with you, and we're better than you, and we're better than you.
Legitimately speaking, is there anything more cancel culturally than a culture that cancels anybody that doesn't follow their rules?
Uh-huh.
I don't think so. But again, one of the things that we were talking about was we had this idea of cancel culture in 2022. Okay. That if you're listening to this much later or in space or whenever it is, like this is what's going on right now in our world. What we're not trying to do is to take all of scripture and bend it around this principle of cancel culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a general question. Is that cancel culture? I think if you held them up to each other 1-to-1, the answer is yeah, kind of, actually. And those things were instituted by God. But here's the thing. This is the kicker. Everybody, pay attention here, all right? It's not going to help you answer any questions, but this is just an interesting kicker, is that God deals in nuance more than his people ever could have imagined to do so, right? So as we were talking about this, there were all the commandments that God gave in the Old Testament, all of the things that were happening, even in throughout the Old Testament into the New Testament, where people were still living, because we get to read the New Testament. They didn't get to read the New Testament. Mm-hmm. They were living it as it was being created. And so still they were living in an Old Testament kind of mindset and law.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus comes, changes a lot of things, says a lot of really, crazy off the wall things for, people who were living in the old covenant, right?
Mm-hmm.
But even if you go back and look, we were talking about things like simple things like lying. I would say simple, right? And we brought up Corey ten Boom, and lying about are you hiding Jews, stuff like that, right? At the end of the day, she lied, right? Some would say that's pretty cut and dry. Other people go, oh, well, she lied because this. And I'm like, well, yeah, but if we were to read things straight up and down, that's bad. That's sin. Do we think that God, when she gets to heaven, is going to go, oh, hey, no, you're fine. Don't worry about it. The question comes into things where it's like, hey, I see your story about Corey ten Boom, and I raise you Rahab. where she absolutely 100% did lie, and
Oh,
God worked in and through that.
she was a liar and a prostitute.
She was a lot of things.
And, was the only family that made it out of Jericho.
I mean,
and yeah, there's what?
Story of Jacob. Okay.
Okay.
So here's another one. This one, I actually just got done writing a thing for our church about this. Story of Jacob. Okay. Jacob deceives his brother, deceives his dad, gets blessed.
Swindled his brother. I don't know if he deceived him. Definitely swindled. Yikes.
You can split the hair as fine as you would like it. Okay. Things were not above board in either direction.
No.
All right. Then goes and, asks God to continue to bless him after he's already carrying the blessing of Abraham, his grandpa, and Isaac. And, now he's moved on, right? Like, it's getting all this stuff already. Then this is the famous story of, Jacob wrestling with the man, right? And so what's going on is he wrestles and he says, I'm not going to let you go until you bless me. And then God does. God blesses him after all this stuff, all the wrong that he's done, and changes his name from Jacob to Israel. And that is the Israel that we know, the nation and all of the things that God's promise ended up being fulfilled in. And so when we think about God working in the nuance that things aren't as cut and dry, you fast forward to the New Testament where people are like, you're not supposed to work on the Sabbath. And Jesus is like, well, actually, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. And so like, there are these ideas where Jesus says, you've heard it said, but I now say to you. And then we come to, this is the crux for me, is the thief on the cross. I heard a TikTok thing the other day where a pastor was saying, thinking about all this stuff going on, the thief gets to heaven and somebody asks him, hey, do you know all of these doctrines? You know all of these things. Have you accepted all of this stuff? Have you done all this stuff? He goes, no, I'm here because the guy in the middle said I could be here. And so it's just all of that taken into the mix. We have all these black and whites, these absolutes that we deal with on a daily basis because those are easy for us. But I find that God works in the nuance more often than he doesn't. I will have mercy on those whom I have mercy. I will have compassion on those whom I have compassion. My ways are not your ways. My thoughts are not your thoughts. Like all these things that God says, it's just really interesting. And so in the midst of all of that, we find ourselves with this question that we ask, that we just kind of have to leave floating out into the ethos. And it's, how should we as Christians approach cancel culture?
Well, I think going back to that original question of like, did God create cancel culture? Just for a second, because I think that helps us try to figure out how we should approach it. Is we were like, no, God didn't create the cancel culture. Did God cancel some things? Yes, canceling, yes, but the culture, there's this whole like mob mentality behind cancel culture that is where we kind of end up going wrong, where we aren't even really asking the Lord about it a lot of times. It's just like there's a bandwagon and we want to jump on it because that's part of like the human psyche that when a whole bunch of people are doing a thing, we want to conform. We want to conform to that thing, even if it is like below us intellectually. And we're like looking around at people like, is 2 + 2 = 3?
Yeah, everybody says it, so it must be true.
okay,
Yeah.
3 it is. There's lots of studies done about that, and it's fascinating. But we do that on a mass like scale. And when we get into this mob mentality, and it does start turning super, it does get soured.
Yeah.
It goes beyond sometimes just accountability into all these other things. And I don't think any of that is of God. And I don't think that when God, addresses sin and stuff, it's not like about this big, huge public shame fest. And
No.
I don't think that God is the author of that.
Yeah.
And I think that we need to be careful about what we do and don't, the bandwagons that we're jumping on, and how we are behaving ourselves once we're there.
Yeah.
As well. We need to be going for righteousness wherever we are.
Right.
And we don't need to be turning a blind eye to sin necessarily. That's not what we're asking anybody to do. And that obviously God doesn't ask us to do that either. But I think also that just, sometimes it goes a little far.
Yep.
I think sometimes we need to listen. I think sometimes we need to admit that we disagree. We talked about book burnings and all, when we were talking last night.
Fair share of CDs.
About how we were kind of encouraged as kids, like when there are these certain dangerous viewpoints, and if you hear them, you got to shut it down. And we were talking about it, and I sometimes still have those tendencies where I don't know if it's just fear or what it is, but I'm like, I need to be careful. I need to be safe. I need to guard these certain things. And so isolate and push away and all, these different things.
I think that where it came down for me was God laid out a lot of law, like a lot of it. Like a lot of law, do's and don'ts. Okay, that was kind of his deal for a while there, to create sanctification and holiness and purity and all sorts of stuff for his people. What I think has happened and has carried on is that we just took that and ran with it and stamped it, and that's it. We don't. It's almost like when somebody tells you to do something and they get kind of almost done with telling you how to do it, and you're like, yeah, I got it. And then you just walk away and you take the information that you have up until that point, and you take no new information after that. And that is kind of what it has
so you
felt
have
like.
3/4 of the theory.
Oh, you have so much of it, but not all of it. And I think that when Jesus came back, when Jesus came, that's when he was like, hey, almost. So close. Here's the rest of it. When he says, I did not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. Like, there's missing pieces that you don't have. But everybody right now thinks that they have all of it. And I'm telling you that you don't. And this is the missing piece. And the missing piece was love and care and understanding and relationships and those kinds of things. Like it's all the touchy-feely stuff, right? That was the missing piece that Jesus brought. Those that took the time to sit with him and to understand and to realize it was more than just power to be sought after, but that there was true mystery to be unlocked. I feel like those are the people that get it, that can move forward, that can understand things. And so, again, we don't have the answers. We just don't. But we do have the question: how should we as Christians approach canceling and cancel culture? Because we've already said, we do think that there are times where we need to call a spade, put our foot down and say this thing is wrong, and take action against people that do that thing unencumbered. But then there's also the times where it's like, hey, do we just disagree on something?
Yeah.
Is this a reason for you to be blacklisted or anything like that? And are we doing our research? I think that's the biggest thing. Are you doing any kind of research at all? So we don't. We're already over time. We don't have, and we didn't scratch the stinking surface of this thing. But think about those things. That's our challenge and our encouragement to you, dear listener and/or viewer, if you're watching on YouTube. Think about how you, as a Christian, or even not, if you're not a Christian, how do you deal with cancel culture? Do you have a personal axe to grind, or are you actually trying to push goodness forward in the world? So, I don't know. What a great question, Anna. We'll check back in on that.